There's a sentence sitting in this person's mouth right now, fully formed, and they've decided you're never going to hear it. Someone just misunderstood them, got it wrong, assumed the worst, filled in the blanks with a story that isn't true. And the old version of this person would have jumped in immediately, explaining, clarifying, defending, laying out every reason and detail until the other person finally got it. But this version just looks at them, feels the whole explanation rise up, and lets it go. Says nothing, lets themselves be misunderstood. To the person watching, it looks like they stopped caring. It looks like coldness, maybe even arrogance. But something completely different is happening underneath. And by the end of this, you're going to understand it so clearly that you might just recognize the exact moment you started doing it too. Because people don't stop explaining themselves all at once. It happens one disappointment at a time. Think about how much explaining a person does in their early life. You explain why you're upset, hoping to be comforted. You explain your choices, hoping to be approved of. You explain your dreams, hoping to be encouraged. You explain your side of the argument, hoping to be understood. And underneath every single one of those explanations is the same quiet human plea. Please see me correctly. Please don't get me wrong. And for a while, you keep offering it. You over-explain. You justify. You give people 3 paragraphs when a sentence would do, because some part of you believes that if you just find the right words, the perfect combination, they'll finally understand and everything will be okay. And then, slowly, life teaches you something brutal. You learn that some people were never listening to understand you. They were listening to respond, to judge, to find the gap in what you said and push into it. You learn that certain people had already decided who you were before you opened your mouth, and no explanation, no matter how careful, how true, was ever going to change the verdict. You poured your heart out and watched it change absolutely nothing, and you did that enough times that eventually a new thought arrived, quiet and final. Why am I still explaining myself to people who already made up their minds? That thought is the turning point. That's the moment the person in this video was born. Now here's where it gets psychologically interesting, because there are actually 2 very different reasons a person stops explaining, and they look identical from the outside, but inside, they couldn't be more opposite. Stay with me, because you need to know which one is yours. The first reason is strength. This is the person who stopped explaining because they finally developed a stable sense of who they are. They know their own intentions. They know the truth of what they did and why. And because that knowing lives inside them now, they no longer need to install it in everyone else's head to feel okay. Someone misunderstands them? It's uncomfortable, but it's survivable, because their sense of self doesn't depend on that person's approval anymore. This is genuine growth. This is what emotional maturity actually looks like. The ability to be misjudged and not fall apart. But the second reason is a wound. And this is the one nobody talks about. This is the person who stopped explaining, not because they grew, but because they gave up. They tried and were dismissed so many times that they simply went silent. Not from strength, but from exhaustion and self-protection. On the surface, they look serene, unbothered, above it all. But underneath, there's a resignation that quietly says, there's no point. No one gets me anyway, why bother? That's not peace. That's a person who stopped knocking because the door never opened. And here's why this distinction matters so much. Because the first person can still open up when they meet someone worth opening up to. Their silence is a choice, and a choice can be reversed. But the second person has built a wall so high that even the right people can't get in. And they've started calling that wall not caring what anyone thinks, when really it's a scar pretending to be a philosophy. So ask yourself honestly, right now, when you stopped explaining yourself, did you put the explanation down because you were finally free of needing it? Or did you drop it because you were tired of it never being enough? Sit with that, because your answer is the difference between wisdom and a very well-disguised wound. Let me make this real, because the difference shows up in tiny, everyday moments. Someone accuses the strong version of something they didn't do, they feel the flash of unfairness, and then they think, the people who matter to me already know who I am. This person's wrong opinion doesn't rewrite my reality. And they move on, genuinely lighter for not fighting it. Now the same accusation hits the wounded version, and they think, of course they think that. Everyone always thinks that. What's the point? And they move on too, but they carry it. It adds one more brick to a wall that's already blocking out the sun. Same silence. Opposite souls. So what do you do with this? Especially if you looked inward just now and felt that second one, the wound, staring back at you, because I'm not going to leave you there. First, keep the good version of this. Genuinely. Not everyone is entitled to an explanation from you, and learning that is one of the healthiest things an adult can learn. You do not owe a defense to every stranger, every critic, every person who's clearly looking for a fight rather than the truth. Guarding your energy from those people isn't coldness. It's basic self-respect, and you should never apologize for it. But, and this is the part that matters most, do not let the wall become total, because here's the trap the wounded version falls into. They get so good at not explaining themselves to people who don't deserve it that they stop explaining themselves to people who do. They go silent with the ones who are actually safe. They stop letting anyone in at all, and they mistake that isolation for strength. And that's the real tragedy of this. Not being misunderstood by strangers, but becoming a stranger to the very few people who genuinely wanted to know you. So here's the actual skill, the thing worth walking away with. It was never stop explaining yourself. It's discernment. It's learning the difference between someone who's asking so they can understand you and someone who's asking so they can use it against you. You stay open to the first. You save your breath from the second. That's the whole art of it. Not a locked door and not an open one, but a door with your hand on it, deciding. Because the goal was never to become someone who explains nothing to no one. The goal was to become someone who no longer needs to be understood by everyone, but still lets themselves be truly known by the ones who count. So let me leave you with the question that decides which direction this goes for you. Not, who have I stopped explaining myself to, but, is there someone in your life, right now, who genuinely wanted to understand you, and you went quiet on them anyway, because staying silent felt safer than risking being seen? Tell me in the comments, not their name, just yes or no, because you learning when to stay silent, that was growth, but you remembering when it's safe to speak again, that might be the bravest thing you do all year.